All right, welcome to the 305 guys on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. We got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. We're sponsored here by Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down your 5. Get your 50. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure you jump in there on all the baseball stuff. We've been hammering that pretty good and doing well. Again, got to put down the 5. Use the 5. They give you 50. We don't know why more of you have not tried this, because it's pretty simple. And also you can play
it's
WNBA,
great.
NFL preseason.
Get in there.
Right? I mean, it's 10-1. Get in there. Also NFL preseason. And then, of course, we're going to get the NBA schedule here today. You can't play that for a little while, but at least you'll get an idea of what you're going to be playing when that comes up. So check it out. It's prizepicks.com. You can see all the different sports, soccer, college football coming up, of course, and then PGA, tennis, and more. So check it out. It's prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE. All right, Miami Dolphins on their tour across America, across the Midwest. Second day of practice against Detroit. We are getting better reports today, Alex, of what happened up there, which is a good sign. Try not to make too much of this. Remember when the Dolphins dominated the Eagles in the preseason, and then in this stuff, and then the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. So I don't read too much into it, but let's get into kind of what we heard off of yesterday first. Do you have concerns that the Miami Dolphins do not practice hard enough?
I mean, I have had long-standing concerns about that, and my concerns were escalated. And I think, maybe the actual quote from the Lions player, Grant Stuard, might have been like amplified a little bit. Because like his exact quote was, "I don't know if they practice how we practice." And then, of course, people read into that, oh, that means the Dolphins are soft. They run it like a country club. I mean, I think his point was more to say, we're the freaking Lions. Dan Campbell is our head coach. We're doing Oklahoma drills like first day of practice. Like, I don't think anybody practices the way the Lions do with that animal as their head coach. I mean, animal in a good way, by the way, just in case you're wondering. Dan Campbell is a man's man. But, the actual on the field reports from yesterday sounded like the Dolphins were getting dominated. They were getting dominated physically, and that their defense didn't have really any answers. And so that really was exacerbated by the comment from Grant Stuard. But it's like anything, Ethan, you mentioned, not to overreact in a good way. I think that basically the way that it sounds like these two joint practices balanced each other out a little bit, that can kind of take us back to a good middle ground. And, for reference, I expect the Lions to be a better NFL team than the Dolphins are this year. So don't mistake me for saying that, oh, the Dolphins are back, they're going to school the Lions. I think the Lions are going to contend for something this year. I don't know if the Dolphins are going to contend for anything, but it certainly takes a little bit of my panic away to know that the Dolphins offense apparently had a strong bounce back against the Lions today. And then also bigger picture, because the biggest thing that I worry about when you're having joint practices, especially with a physical team like Detroit, are injuries. We had a scare with Chop Robinson yesterday. He seemed to indicate that it's nothing serious. So just get out of these joint practices. Healthy is the number one thing that I can ask for. But to answer the greater part of your question, I do have, concerns about how hard the Dolphins practice. Because how you practice is how you play. And I know that, Grant Stuard is not the only one to talk about this. Players who are former Dolphins have kind of implied that McDaniel doesn't really run the toughest atmosphere down here. So that's always something that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, and I think that there's more concern when you're going up against a team that is coached by a guy who was briefly your head coach, even if it was way back. And I think that this contrast between McDaniel's approach and someone like Dan Campbell's approach would seem to be absolute polar opposites. There's always going to be fans that take a side on that one way or the other. Now, at the time, I don't think there were a ton of people that were calling for Dan Campbell to be the long-term head coach. There were some, and I was doing radio shows at the time that they thought, but they also thought he was kind of a meathead and that he didn't know enough about kind of calling plays and running a team. And so we've come full circle on this. I mean, the Dolphins have had all kinds of different head coaches. I was there for Jimmy Johnson's first practices and the two-a-days and the Oklahoma drills and all that. Did it lead to anything? I mean, it led to them drafting Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas, but they didn't go anywhere. Wannstedt pulled it back a little bit. We saw obviously with Saban, there was a little bit more added there, but also we got the Nick Saban Memorial Bubble where the guys started to go inside, which
Yeah.
in the old days, that's not something that Shula or Jimmy Johnson would have done. They would have wanted them in the heat all the time. Plus, there are different rules now. Like the NFLPA has not stepped up for his players in a lot of ways, but they have shortened practice times. There's a lot of stipulations in there that there didn't used to be. It's never going to be the way it was. It's not even going to be the way it was under Campbell. I think the bigger issue here with this is there's a perception that's now grown with McDaniel, and I'm a McDaniel fan, okay? But there's a perception that's grown that he cannot take control of the team. That basically the funny act is kind of worn out a little bit. He's highly intelligent. There's no question about that. But then there's also been issues getting the plays in, all that kind of stuff. And so that sort of eats into credibility as well. I think that's really what this is about. And I don't think it's going to go away. Honestly, Alex, until the Dolphins would start winning some cold weather, tough man games like that. And they haven't done that during his time. And there's a perception that this is a finesse team. And,
Right.
with Tua, with Tyreek, with Jalen Waddle, it's hard to make an argument that that's not the case, even though they obviously tried to upgrade the trenches this offseason. And it appears in some ways, at least on the offensive line, that they have.
And I'll admit I'm one of those people, like, I haven't thrown in the towel completely on Mike McDaniel because first and foremost I'm a Dolphin fan, so I support whoever is in charge. Like I want to see him win, and I find him incredibly likable. But for me, the honeymoon is over, and it goes to a lot of what you're saying in that I need to see results for you to disprove the narratives that come along with you. The narratives being he's just such a chill guy. He's such a player's coach. He's such an anti-football coach. I think at a certain point, a team takes on the personality of their head coach, right? I mean, you see Dan Campbell in Detroit, I think is the ultimate example of that you take on the personality of your head coach. And if the personality of your head coach is the polar opposite of that, and you start to have concerns, and listen, Chris Greer deserves some blame as well, because when you've had like players, in the locker room over the last couple of years that have been problematic. One of them recently got traded. Another one of them is still on the team. Hopefully Tyreek Hill is, changing his tune and everything. But this is a guy who I will not forget week 18 basically quit the team, right? I can't forget that happened with Tyreek Hill. So, maybe you can only expect McDaniel to have so much control over these guys that Chris Greer is drafting and trading for. But at the same time, like if the perception on the Dolphins has been, it's been a little bit too laid back. Haven't really had a locker room that's fully in control of their environment, that a certain amount of that falls to the head coach. And then you didn't get into the playoffs last year. You're not winning playoff games. We haven't done that in over 2 decades at this point. That the honeymoon for me is over. Like, I hope I'm wrong about McDaniel, but I think for a lot of the folks out there that said when he got hired, this guy just doesn't seem like a head NFL football coach. I'm starting to maybe see it more that way now.
Yeah, and I think that some of it is him and Greer in concert. And I think the biggest thing that's a problem is that you can't really change who you are. Like this is the McDaniel can't go from being, sort of the smart guy with a lot of, wise ass, funny comments, who's very supportive of his players, to all of a sudden, here, do what I say. It just doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. I think that the comparison to Miami, to the Heat, with Spo, is that Spo doesn't necessarily show his hard ass side publicly, but the players know it's there privately. And the key difference is that Spo has the 100% full till the day he dies support of the people above him, which has been shown over and over, whether it was when LeBron was acquired and people thought he was going to get moved out, and that didn't happen, to the 9-8 start in 2010. He was going to get fired. He thought he was going to get fired. That didn't happen. Pat stood up for him. And then you look at what happened in the 2011 finals, and people thought he might get fired after they lost the finals, and that didn't happen. And so Spo now has the credibility where he can change his behavior slightly. It doesn't really matter. McDaniel, it's tougher because the guy above him, although we call him GM for life, necessarily the people above Spo did in the Heat organization. And so I think the players look at it and they're kind of like, okay, we know you, Mike. Like, don't be this guy. You can't be this guy now. I mean,
Yeah.
this comes in from Brian. Isn't the issue more a personnel issue, which should be on the GM? Mike McDaniel got more of too. I'm with you. This is look.
I'm open to
I think
that.
both you and I'm a McDaniel, right? And I'm a McDaniel fan. Like without McDaniel, the Tua project would have been a whole total 100% bust. I don't think there's no matter what you think of what Tua became or has become with McDaniel. Like that, I dumped. My internet's a little bit in and out, but that would have been a guy probably dumped for like a third round pick because at that point because you weren't going to get any production out of him. So McDaniel's solved that problem, but it's the other needs to get solved, and I think that's where we're at. And I do think the start of this season matters, Alex. Like, let's say they start.
Oh yeah.
Their beginning of their schedule is not particularly difficult, but let's say they start 1-3. What are the conversations that we're having then?
The conversations you start having at 1-3 are midseason firing. I mean, the NFL, it stands for not for long. And when you've got a coach, again, the Dolphins are coming off a year when they missed the playoffs. If you start 1-3, then you may be, thinking about a coaching change in October, early November.
You know what they're going to get if the players don't like McDaniel's style. You always get the opposite the next time around. Like, you're going to get a hard ass if you don't make this work with McDaniel. And there are certain players who, well, some of them have gotten out of town, and now Jalen Ramsey's trashed everybody on the way out. And I don't know if you take Jalen Ramsey seriously because he's had problems in so many different places. It's kind of like, examine the source here a little bit. But some of the things that have been spoken to the locker room, if those guys can't get it right with McDaniel, if they can't sort of take the trust that he's given them and do the work, put in their best performance and all, the next guy's going to force them to. Like, that's how this always works. You don't get two nice guys in a row, okay? And you always go the other direction. And they went totally the other direction from Flores to McDaniel. They will go back to that. And that's why I think that, some of this is talent, but some of it is attitude. Now, you look at guys like Zach Sealer, some of the others they have, but they also don't have some leadership they had from last year was Calais Campbell, Terran Armstead, guys who you knew, okay, if they were healthy enough to go, or even in Terran's case, in Armstead's case, even if he wasn't, they were going to go. They were going to play as hard as they could. They don't have those guys as backstops this time, and I think, Alex, that's one of the questions. Alex, I'll leave it here because again, my internet's a little shaky. They appreciate everybody hanging on.
A little bit.
I got the computer working, but unfortunately, not the wireless. So second and third preseason, see.
Say it again.
The second and third preseason games, and the second and third preseason games, the number one thing that you want to see.
Oh, I mean, the number one thing I want to see is I would say better execution on short yardage. That was an area that I don't think any of us were pleased with in the opener against Chicago. And I know we're not going to see a lot of starters, nor should we, but I want to see more consistency from your second and third quarterback, who in that game will be probably your first and second quarterback. Zach Wilson probably starting. Quinn Ewers getting some playing time. I want to see Zach Wilson being just a lot more decisive, getting the football out of his hands, because that's something he needs, and also the Dolphins offense needs, because that's what Tua does. If you're going to be Tua's backup, you have to be more decisive in getting rid of the football. And I just want to see Quinn Ewers look in a preseason game the way he's looked at times in practice, which has been very good. He just didn't show it under the lights in Chicago. So those are the big things I want to see.
I'm curious to see what the Washingtons look like. Again, I thought that was promising. By the way, I think I finally fixed the wireless right before the end of this. I want to see what the Washingtons look like, and also the secondary. Like again, let's not turn and give up 3rd and 15s because you're playing 20 yards off and you're running towards your own end zone. It's got to be, especially from the veteran guys that they brought in, like Mike Hilton. That's got to be better than that. Liked what I saw from Willie Gay pretty much all throughout camp, and now I think he's going to be a big addition. They have some new faces here. I think one of the things that has to happen is some of the new guys have to assert their influence. This this is an open slate here. Like, there has not been great leadership here for a long time. You have an opportunity to take the reins here a little bit, even if you haven't been here long. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. When is the Heat opening up camp? We're getting the schedule today. We'll have a lot of schedule content on here. Believe the camp always opens the last Monday of September. Is always media day, and they are going to be at FAU this time around. I mean, you can figure it out. They're playing this October 4th in Puerto Rico against Orlando, so obviously they're going to be in camp probably a week before that. So probably, I haven't checked what the last Monday of September is, but 27th, 28th, something along those lines. All right, Alex, appreciate it. Use the code 5FIVE. My wireless has fixed itself. Look at that. See,
What did you do?
I
Did you hit like a secret button you found? Like, what happened there?
I went all Dan Campbell on it. They wouldn't have listened to me if I was Mike McDaniel. Anyway, Alex, appreciate it. We'll be back on Tuesday.
See ya.